Everybody, this is Perch. It feels like I do this video on a, I don't know, monthly basis. So I don't want to bore everybody by going over the exact same stuff again. So I was trying to come up with some slightly new take on it. And in this case, we'll try it from a different angle. The basic premise is people hear what they want to hear. And so many times when you're debating somebody or when somebody's making a point or arguing or any of that, you're not actually arguing the point. You're arguing people's interpretation of that point. So to that end, we have this kind of bizarre article. Brian Hibbs did this long article. A lot of people commented on it. Heidi McDonald's commented on it. Ron Mars has commented on it. Lots of people have drug it around. And what they do is they look in here and they take the part of this article. This article goes on freaking forever. It's like this 50-page document going through the numbers. And I can summarize it for you this way in a unemotional blank kind of here's the facts. Just the facts, ma'am. Here you go. The comic business, if you expand the comic business to include things like Scholastic and like manga, did incredible last year. It did better than it's done in a long time. Not ever. The article at some point says ever, but that's a bald-faced lie. It is not done better. The publishing world in general did better in the 80s and 90s, and that's just in parts of the 80s and 90s, I should say. And so it's ridiculous to try and compare that. But better this century, sure. Since 2000, 2020 had the highest numbers when you add in those things. And in addition to that, the person writing the article claimed that their personal sales were down 33%, that they lost basically a third of their business. They shut down a store. Okay, so what happens is people read this and they hook off one or the other. These are extremes. No, this is not a video of saying one person says this and one person says this, but I think the middle. It's not the middle. It's the facts. And just stop being morons with each other. We all know the facts. Like everybody gets this on some level. I think a lot of people play stupid. There's this, what is it? Richard's been saying this, and I agree with this point. And I know every time I say this, that there's people who get triggered by that. I mean, stop it, morons. I mean, okay, I've gone too hot here. Let me calm it down a little bit. The point is, why do so many people pick, annoying asshole as their persona? It is a good question, because and this is not a new development. This is not a Twitter only development. If you look at a lot of reality TV, if you look at a lot of the, Love Island or Porn Island or Sex Island or Hump Island or any of the various shows that go on, the persona of asshole is a common one. Somebody comes on and they're on Survivor, on The Amazing Race. You have these people who their persona is dick. And I don't know why they decide to do this. Nobody likes it. Nobody. But that is the persona that they have decided to choose. And so when these things come out, when these articles come out, people tap into that asshole persona and then immediately ignore all the dumb common sense like, hey, if you're working in traditional Western comics, the direct market, the stuff that's in Diamond, and that is what the comic industry has typically labeled itself as for 50 odd years. I mean, not that long, because Diamond hasn't been a long. Now I'm arguing with these fandom people in my head. Anyway, comics has been that way forever. If you say, hey, how are comics doing? Until recently, and maybe even not now, nobody would go, well, we get a count in Scholastic books and stuff from Japan and stuff from France. Everybody knew what you were asking. You're asking mainly, how's Marvel and DC and Image doing? That's what they're asking. That is what most people mean by that question. Now, like I've done videos in the past, like I've talked about in the past, I think it's an interesting conversation, and I think it's probably reasonable for us to start to reset how we think about comic numbers to include things like crowdfunding and manga and Scholastic. I think it's reasonable to do that because I think there's an overall chain of how people read books and sequential art and all the rest. I think you could make a valid case. I would probably argue on that case. However, in arguing for that case, I would also have to say, because I'm not a liar, I would have to say, hey, we didn't used to count these books. We didn't used to count manga in when we talked about comics. So, numbers are going to be higher because we've added more stuff to the pot, right? This is not some complicated, controversial take. This is not like saying, are you Republican or Democrat, or are you religious or not religious, or, do you like K-pop or not? There really is not two sides to the story. If you take one thing, comic numbers, and you add in new things you haven't counted before, the number will go up. This isn't a objective point. This is math. So, sorry, it's math. So, everybody knows this though. This is one of the most phony argument things people do. Is we have this debate around comic numbers, and people like to pretend that hey, counting all this other stuff is the same as how we counted it a year or two ago. It's not. Everybody knows that. And stop being disingenuous with it. I hate these. What do you mean? Comics are doing great. You've added more things to the number. I think it's correct that you do so, but it's not the same number anymore. Stop fooling around. Also, I think that when you say, hey, no, the comic business is imploding, people are closing down shops left and right. No, they're not. They're not. There are comic shops that are healthy. There are definitely comic shops that are healthy. There are people who are doing well. But the people who are doing well all have one very common trait. And again, you could talk to them. You go to these shops, you could talk to retailers in person. I've done it. Why don't you? Go talk to these people. What do you discover? You discover the same thing that Barnes and Noble and big bookstores are discovering too. If you add in different things, if you diversify, if you add in more stuff that you're selling, then you'll have more stuff to sell. And if one thing starts to suck, you basically have insurance because you've minimized its impact on your store. So if you are a comic shop and all you have is new comics, very little back issue collection, no manga, no toys, no customer service, your place is a dump, then you are going to suffer and your comic shop's probably going to close. At that point, all you're banking on is an extremely loyal clientele that's going to remain committed to you and their pull box. That's it. If you go down the list of all the comic shops that succeeded in 2020, and there were several, there were absolutely several, maybe even you could say a majority, because back in 2016 and 2017, many comic shops started to make the move to adding in gaming and bringing in more back issues and going out and buying up stock at flea markets and swap meets and other places. They started expanding their power of the product they sold. Many shops started carrying manga. Many shops started figuring out different ways to engage with the community. They'd run free comic book day. Instead of doing it in the shop, they'd take some tables to a movie theater and they'd do it there. There's a lot of things comic shops started doing. And by and large, every comic shop that started to do that has done better. Now, this is where, be honest, is that a surprise? It shouldn't be. Of course they're doing better. They're selling more stuff. They've reduced their dependency on one item. This is common sense, and this predates comics. I mean, somewhere back in olden times, in the Roman Empire, there was some guy who sold apples and was like, shit, sometimes the apples go bad, and then I have nothing to sell. I should put some bread in here, and I should put some knives in here, and maybe some togas in here, because people like to wear around that, and I'll have these different items. And then if the apples suck one day or are bad or I don't get them or there's no apples in the field, I can still sell some togas to some of these Roman dudes around here. And amazing, the business succeeded. This is not rocket science. And when we see articles like this, when we see reactions to this, we see people on social media doing the like, what? Comics doing great. It's like, come on. I can't, I do not believe you that you're this stupid. I don't believe it. We all know how this game works. There are not comic shops that have a completely nice diversified business, clean shop, good customers, prime location, everything great, and then they're just magically going out of business because Marvel creates another America Chavez series. That's not how it works. The people going out of business are running a very narrow margin, thin, not diversified business, and we're struggling. That's who's going out of business. Now, you might make the argument right at this moment to say the Western comics market, the Marvel, DC, Image, the thing we used to count, even 5 years ago as comics, that subset. If that subset was stronger, comic shops would be doing better. Correct. You are correct. If more comics were selling over 100,000, comic shops would be doing better. Yes, absolutely true. No doubt about it. If all the comics, or not all of them, but if comics were selling today like they were selling in 1990, where you had a large percentage of comics in the direct market selling over 100,000 copies, then comic shops wouldn't need to diversify so much. Now they probably still should, because again, that's just smart business. But yes, absolutely yes, things would be doing better. And so this argument is pointless and stupid. The argument of comics are doing better than ever. What's everybody complaining about? Well, people are complaining about a lot of different things, all over the place, in many different forms. I mean, the entire purpose of Twitter is to bitch. That's the only point to that entire product at this point. That's what it's there for. But these fundamentals that we conveniently ignore because we want to hear what we want to hear it's exhausting, it's tiring, and just who's being fooled at this point? Put your hand up. Is anyone listening to all this, putting up with all this, and believing any of this at this point? Is anybody believing that that everything is perfect in comics because last year was good? Does anybody believe that? Nobody really believes that. It's an extreme, stupid position. So stop putting on the persona that you're a dumb asshole that believes these things. I don't know. Whatevs? Whatevs? My daughter's rubbing off on me. Anyway, there you have it. I mean, none of this stuff is hard, and it's all phony. I believe this is all performative. I don't think any of the people making these arguments are really confused or do not understand what's going on. They all know. This is all just a big, dumb, circle jerk sideshow. Thanks for listening.